Recently, I posted a video on my YouTube Shorts feed about a failed shifter cable in my C6 Corvette. I know that it's a common problem with these cars and it's happened to a lot of folks that have the automatic transmission. So I wanted to do this full-length video that explains the different areas where the shift cable can fail and how to repair it. So there's two areas where the shift cable can fail. One is where it attaches to the shifter inside the car. There's a little plastic bushing that deteriorates over time, and then it just pops off of where it connects to the shifter, and then the shifter will just move freely without actually shifting through the gears. So if you have this issue and you notice that your shifter is moving freely, then you know that you have a failed shifter cable. And it could be either at the front where it connects to the shifter, or the other area that could fail is where it attaches to the transmission, which is in the rear. Now, this issue is not to be confused with the shift lock solenoid that also fails in these cars. The difference in how you can tell which issue you're experiencing is a failed shifter cable will allow that shifter to move freely, and as you move it forward or back, it's not going to change the transmission selection. The other problem with the shift lock solenoid is your shifter inside the car will just be stuck and it won't move out of park. That's a different issue, but also a very easy fix. So today's the day that I'm going to be working on the shift cable repair in the C6. A little backstory on how it broke. I went with my wife to look at a new car and we pulled into the dealership. Everything was fine. We finished looking at the car. We were ready to go home. I put the car in reverse, was backing it up, and then when I went to switch from reverse back into drive, that's when the shift cable broke. Well, the cable didn't break. The bushing was deteriorated and it popped off of the ball joint that it connects to. So the car was stuck in reverse. So I reversed the car about 150 yards through the parking lot. So I found a safe spot and then shut it off, put the parking brake on, went home and got my tools and did the repair on the bushing on the shifter in the front. But since the bushing in the front was deteriorated, that means the bushing in the rear is going to be deteriorated or deteriorating very soon as well. So now I'm going to go ahead and replace the whole shifter cable. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll explain the process as I go through the steps. I'm going to start on the inside first. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that center console. Now you only need to remove the front part of the console. You don't have to remove this back section here, but I am going to remove this door just because it gets in the way when I'm working on it, so I'm going to take that off too. All right, so I'm going to remove these four first. Okay. Next, you're going to want to use your interior panel tool just to pop this off. Have access to these two screws or bolts. So there's two here. Then once you remove your parking brake boot, do this carefully because they get deteriorated over time and you don't want to break the tabs. Then you have two screws, one here and one down in here as well, and they're all the same size. So remove those four, and then the rest of the way that this is held in is just by clips. All right, and this is a 7mm. They're all 7mm. Now I need to remove my face. There's just a couple of screws that I had to take out. There's a side trim piece right here that needs to be removed, and that's also held in by clips in the front. So we already removed the two bolts. So I'm gonna kind of slide it down and backwards. There we go. And now the console should just snap out of place. So as I do is I lift it up here, I lift it up, and then I'm going to pull this back, and those clips will snap out of place. Now you will need to move your shifter back in order to get the room to lift this out. And before you pull it out, you need to move it just a little bit just to gain access to unhook these connectors. So you have your hazards, you have heated seats, have the 2 heated seat connectors, you have the cigarette lighter connector that's behind there, your traction control here, your airbag light, oh, mine's already disconnected, and this is a connector that I added for my parking brake switch. That way I can view things on screen. And then your other cigarette lighter. So all those need to be unplugged. I apologize if my camera angles aren't great, but it's kind of a tight fit in here. 2, 3, 4. 5, 6. So while the majority of these connectors are compression, where you can squeeze a tab to remove them, this one is a little bit different. You have to lift the tab to remove it. So if your problem is that your shifter is stuck in park, I mentioned in the beginning that there are 2 different problems that I was going to be covering in this video. So if this shifter is stuck in park, it means your solenoid doesn't have enough juice to pull the locking pawl out of place to allow this to move freely. So I'm going to show you quickly how you can fix that once you get to this point, and then I'll jump right back into the shifter cable. So you're going to want to loosen up this boot. So if you look in here, you'll see that I have 2 zip ties, one here and one there. So those zip ties are tying back the locking pawl that the solenoid controls. You see this yellow here? Those are the windings for the solenoid, and the plunger is like right in front, and it moves back and forward and controls a locking claw that locks this into place. That gets stuck. So mine's just tied back permanently so it can always move freely. Alright, so I put the light on in here so you can see it a little bit better. So this black piece that the zip tie is wrapped around is the locking pawl. And that piece of metal right there that leads to the yellow windings is the plunger for the solenoid. And that just gets weak over time. And people have replaced them, but I've heard that that didn't fix the problem. I guess that maybe resistances somewhere else in the circuit change over time, and it weakens the current flow that goes to this, and it just doesn't work. So this is the best fix. So anyway, so the black piece is the locking pawl. That's what you want to pull backwards. So I tied a zip tie around that, and then used another zip tie just to connect it to this little eyelet that I found in the shifter here. And my shifter just always moves freely. Okay, so now I'm going to get back to the shifter cable replacement. Alright, so now you have 4 bolts that you need to remove. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I'm going to remove those 4 bolts that I mentioned. They're 10 millimeter bolts. All right, so those are removed. My shifter should be loose. All right, so the shifter's disconnected. So this is where the shifter cable connects to on the bottom. That's just like a little ball joint. And this is cable. This is the bushing. So I replaced this bushing, like I said, but since that failed, I know that the one in the back is going to fail pretty soon as well, so I'm going to replace the whole cable. Now this is the kit that I used for this repair in case you get stranded. 14041 Dorman. And this is a universal kit, so it has lots of different sizes that fit different vehicles if you do get in a bind. But as I stated, I do recommend changing out the rest of the cable when you get to a place where you can actually work on your car, because replacing the whole cable is a lot more involved than just repairing this bushing. This you can do in the parking lot like I did in maybe 30 minutes. But replacing the whole cable is a couple-hour job. All right, so this is the replacement shifter cable. Comes with the bushings already installed. This is what the end looks like that connects to the transmission. I ordered the OEM from GM. First thing I noticed when I opened it up, made in China. OEM, GM, made in China. So this cable comes coiled up in the box. So I took it out a few weeks before doing this project just to let it straighten out. That way it doesn't try to retain that coil shape when I'm trying to install it. All right, I have the car jacked up. I have 2 jack stands, both on the driver's side. That's the side that the shift cable is on. So that's the side that I'm jacking it up from. So I have a jack stand in the back, one in the front, and I have the jack there just as extra support, just for additional safety. So now I'm going to show you where the back side of that cable is. Right there. Right there. Feels like it's on there pretty good. I'm going to replace it anyway. It's aged. I'm going to start by removing these exhaust bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, so the exhaust is disconnected. It's still just hanging here. So just a little tip, what I did, made a mistake. Started loosening all these connectors and the ones back there as well. What happened was the exhaust started separating here and it wouldn't give me enough clearance to drop it off the flanges. So I would leave those connected, these and these, but disconnect or unbolt these, the hangers that have the springs on them. I would disconnect those, leave the others connected, and then separate it from the headers. With the exhaust sitting the way that it is, it gives me enough clearance to do everything that I need to do. I can get up in here. I'm gonna flip this around. I'll get up in here. It gives me access, enough room to access this shift cable. So the next step, what I'm gonna do, remove all these bolts, get this plate out of the way. All right, plates removed. All right, so there's two areas where this cable is secured. One is on this bracket here. The other, right up in there. It's kind of hard to see. It's just to the right of these lines up top. Right up there. So before removing the cable that's in the car, it'll help you to understand how this works and make it easier to remove the other. So this is the part that mounts to the bracket back by the transmission. You simply need to squeeze these two tabs in to release it. Now this is the locking mechanism that mounts by the shifter inside the car. The way that this works, there's two tabs here that you can squeeze in that will release this from the bracket. Right now it's in the lock position. So I need to lift this little tab up and slide this piece back. So this gets lifted up. And then that piece will slide back. And you see you can depress these tabs. So this is a position that you want to have it when you're ready to install it. And then once it's installed, you want to slide that back forward to lock it into place. All right, so now I'm going to show you how I release the front part of the cable from this bracket. So here it is right here. So all I did was I put a screwdriver on here. I pushed it up and it came right out of that bracket there. You just fell to the side. So now the front part's disconnected, so now I want to follow it back. Here's the back side. You see it has a little locking pin in there. So I'm going to remove that, and then that'll allow me to depress those tabs and slide it this way. All right, old cable's out. I actually had to remove the bracket as well that mounts on the transmission, because the way that this was mounted, this C opening is right up against the transmission. So there's no way that this would come out. So I just had to loosen up the top bolt and take this one out, and then the bracket came right out. It's a little bit tough to reach this one. This was the upper, on the upper side. I believe it is in there like this. This one was a little bit harder to reach, but you can get to it. All right, so I'm gonna install this bracket back on here. Before it goes on the car. It'll just be easier to do it that way, and then I can put the safety clip back in as well. Okay, so that's back together. Now it's ready to go back in the car. All right, so this bolt right here was the one that I was saying is a little bit difficult to get to. See my arms squished in here. Trying to reach up there just to point at it. I didn't take it all the way off, I just loosened it. So I should be able to slide the bracket right back on there, and then I'll be able to tighten that up with my socket and extensions. All right, so I slipped this bracket back into place. Didn't tighten it down yet. Just have to tighten this bolt. And the one right up in there. In case you were wondering what extensions that I was using, just have a 13mm deep socket, and then this long extension here. I can get my finger on it. I'm going to finger tighten it, and then I'll go ahead and I'll put a socket on there and torque it down. All right, front piece is clipped into place. Let's see if I can get this in there, if you can see. So there it is. It's latched on the bracket. You can see how it's sitting. Now I'm going to show you on the other cable exactly which ridge it's going to sit on. You can't really see when you're installing it in there You just gotta go by feel. But if you know which ridge it's supposed to click into, you should be able to do it just by feel and then lock it into place. So you see on here there's a couple different ridges. So when you're going by feel, you're like, okay, which is the ridge that it's supposed to connect onto? It's supposed to, the bracket's supposed to go right in here, inside of that ridge. You might get in there first by accident and think you're in the right place, but you're not. Or it might even go here. You might think you're in the right place, but you're not. It's got to be right in there. So before you start putting everything together on the bottom of your car, you want to reconnect your shifter, because you're going to need to set your tension on the back end to make sure that the lever is in the right place when the transmission's in the correct gear selection. So this piece here is what you're going to remove once you set your tension. So I have the car in park, transmission's in park, the shift lever inside the car is in park, everything lines up. So I'm going to remove this, then I'm going to run it through all the gears and make sure that it goes through smoothly. Oh, stuck. Alright, so I'm going to remove that for now, and I'm going to push this into place. That's going to lock it in right there. Alright, now I'm just going to start putting everything back together. Should be good to go. Thank you for watching my video. If you like the information that I provided in this video, please give it a like. If you like the information that I provide on my channel, please give us a subscribe. I'll be posting more great videos consisting of all the cool projects that we work on in the garage.